Hi, I'm Mark Lawson, president of ECS Publishing Group, and I am joined today by Jennaya Robison, who is associate professor in choral music and director of choral studies at the University of Missouri Kansas City Conservatory. And we are going to visit about choirs as we move into this post-pandemic world. So welcome, Jennaya.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You moved to Kansas City pretty much right before COVID. So I'm sure that was a bit of a shock as well. Kind of describe your program and what you do there so that for those that don't know much about UMKC.
Sure. Yeah. And actually, I moved to Kansas City actually during COVID. So I accepted the position here right before COVID happened. And we were all dismissed from schools in March of 2020. And then I started in the fall of 2020. So yeah, we have a booming program here at UMKC. We have 6 choirs. I'm the head of the choral studies and then the head of the graduate choral conducting cohort and curriculum. So we have 7 graduate choral conductors here, a mixture of DMA and master students, and majors and non-majors singing in choirs and doing the best that we can to keep things going during these uncertain times.
How did you stay active during the pandemic?
So a year ago, fall 2020, there was a mask mandate and we were very, very cautious about rehearsals indoors, but wanted to make sure that we kept some ensemble and live music making experience possible for our students. And so we pivoted to rehearsing outside. We actually rehearsed inside of our parking garage that's adjacent to our music building. And we would alternate between the parking garage and the lawn in front of the building because the parking garage was somewhat of a luxurious acoustic space, but too live to be able to do any sort of precision. And then the lawn was not as easy to sing in, but would give us a better idea of hearing mistakes, hearing tuning and such. So we would alternate between the two and did that really until Thanksgiving. When the university, then we were put fully back online, as I think most schools were. In the spring semester, then we knew that we couldn't rehearse outside in Kansas City because it was just too cold, that we were able to use our large recital hall, which seats, I believe it's about 500. And we used the theater seats to space everyone out. Everyone was masked. And we rehearsed in there, and we would rehearse. We would do only half an hour together, but the way that we were able to make use of our full hour rehearsal time was we would start in 2 other locations in section rehearsals, then come together and do a 2T rehearsal. And we would do that several times per week. And actually, we were able to get an incredible amount of music making done and produce several videos and online concerts. And so I really felt that was representative of what we could do to some extent in a normal semester. So I do feel very proud that we were able to give the students a really authentic and meaningful musical experience in the last year.
So kind of where are you now in this? Are you kind of back to normal or are you just moving that way?
Yeah, I would say that the only thing that makes it not normal is that the singers are all masked. But otherwise, we're rehearsing. We're not socially distant. Everyone is required to wear a mask at this point, but we rehearse the full rehearsal period, and we're doing the repertoire that we typically would program, but they are singing masked. It's different this year because we're actually able to be in our rehearsal spaces that are intended for that purpose. And so acoustically, they're much more conducive to doing rehearsals. And so it's the process of making music goes a lot faster now. Especially we noticed coming back this year that the distancing of having to put singers 12 feet apart, that was probably what slowed things down the most. The singers began to adapt to singing it with a mask very, very quickly. I mean, it's not fun, to be honest, but it's workable. But the distancing, that was more difficult. But this is really working quite smoothly, actually.
That's good. That's good. Well, I know a lot of high school and collegiate conductors are kind of experiencing, maybe some reluctance from some people coming back to choir, or maybe freshmen didn't have a very great experience their last year and aren't quite where they would be normally. Are you seeing any of that or hearing about that?
Yeah, I do see that there are some students who, well, first, I think that they're just socially, physically, vocally not used to the rigor of what it takes to sing a full hour rehearsal. I mean, vocally, I notice even in my own singing voice, I'm not used to singing for that long anymore. So, as vocal athletes, that's taken some conditioning for sure to build back up to that level of stamina, just as far as any number of skills that we have to do. I think that I noticed that the singers actually appear really sort of emotionally wounded. That they just feel a little lost, and they feel a loss of a sense of community. Many of these students who are coming in from high school, they've had 2 years where they haven't had anything normal. All their expectations of high school, whether it was prom or, just graduation, things like that, they haven't had that. And so I have noticed that I am intentionally trying to compensate for the experiences that they've lost.
Well, that's what my next question was going to be, what are you doing about that?
I think that I got into this to make music at a very high level. We're at one of the two public conservatories in the United States. We want to make music at a really excellent level, but I'm really intentionally putting their needs as humans first. And so we are doing much more team building. We're doing activities where they can come together and be outside, and they can take off their masks. They can sing for a little bit outside. They can see each other's faces. I mean, we laugh about the fact that they go outside and I'll say, I didn't know you look like that. We kind of laugh about it, but that idea that, that all has not been lost, that we're going to come together as a community and wind up stronger on the other end. I also like to program thematically. So a lot of what we're doing musically is in a vein where we get to talk about how they're doing as individuals. We're doing a piece by Susan Labar called More Than Enough, and talking about this idea that, that we a lot of times, especially I think as musicians and having a lot of music majors in a competitive field, that we often feel vulnerable to self-doubt and being able to combat that, and also feeling that, well, I've been cheated with 2 years of study that I didn't get to have, or that I had college online. How do I reconcile feeling like I kind of got the short end of the stick? So we've done a lot of that and trying to make things really meaningful. And, we're doing some pieces that in conservatory singers, which is our predominantly graduate level singers, we're doing a whole truth and reconciliation project surrounding one of our most famous alums, and that's William Dawson, and really focusing on the music of the African-American experience. I've tried to show them that we're hitting the ground running. We're living in the middle of COVID, and we're just going to operate within whatever construct we need to, but it's not going to stop us. We're just going to work with it. I'm proud of the work that they're doing.
It's great. That's great. My next question was going to be how that one of your responsibilities is obviously helping educate choral directors for the next generation, and that if the pandemic changed how you saw that, or if there are ways that you feel like it's different than it was prior, things that you're concentrating on more. Just some thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think that a lot of my students, one thing that they've noticed is that I do have quite a few graduate students who have taught in the public schools. And there's such a great focus on literacy that we have as public school educators that I want to support, I want to cultivate. But we've noticed that we have to temper that with kind of, in a way, a Suzuki approach of meet them where they're at. Let's get them singing first. And if we do have to do some learning that's more rote learning focused, to be able to cultivate an environment where literacy is welcome, we've had to do a little shift in that regard. Also because singing with the mask is possible, but it does create an additional barrier that you're having to work with that, and you can't completely focus on literacy all the time. So we've shifted some of the methodology that way. I think also as a teacher, I have personally had to adjust a little bit of my attendance policies and how seriously we take students when they say that they are ill. Before we would laugh about how, you'd have kind of an infirmary of students around the periphery coughing, and maybe they're proud of the fact that they came to rehearsal and they had a fever. And now we're horrified that we ask students to do that. So I think that that there's been a great shift that is very positive to have students understand that we now want them to take care of themselves as human beings and not constantly try to sort of tough it out or take one for the team. That's not a good method in any respect if they're feeling ill. So that's been different for sure.
Well, and I know that the vocal mechanism and the vocal process has always been something that you have studied and it's a part of what you do. Talk a little bit about what steps you think people should be taking right now with the voice to help build it.
One of the things that we did last year when we would do in-person rehearsals, and then there would be one day a week where we needed to be online. And so it was a great opportunity for me to do lectures on anatomy and physiology and vocal pedagogy. We would do a lot of talking about how the mechanism works, what makes it more difficult when we're masked, what is more difficult when we're distanced. And I did notice an uptick in the level of independence that singers had to achieve in order to make things possible. But I did notice that with the mask, there's increased jaw tension. There's an increase in just sort of a misunderstanding of the use of the breath energy, because the mask creates this it lessens the feedback that you get as a singer, or it makes you feel like you're singing all by yourself. So for me, when I've had to sing masked, and I've jumped in the choir when I have a graduate student conducting so that I can feel what it's like for the singers, I'm amazed how I feel like I'm singing all by myself. And so for some students, that forces them to push to try and hear more. Some students, they back way off. So it has forced me to take more time to talk about how the mechanism works. We've been doing a lot of semi-occluded vocal techniques. We can't necessarily sing through a straw right now because you have to take off your mask to do that. But we'll do a lot of humming. We'll do a lot of focus on releasing tension and aligning the instrument. But I integrate that continually, even in the vocalization, of course, but also in the repertoire itself. So there's just more time that we take to talk about it, for sure.
I was thinking one of the things is that we can't see how they're forming their vowels. You can't, and I've thought how much attention pre-pandemic we used to give to how they look when they sing, because you can tell so much. And that's gone right now. It'll be interesting to see how that comes back.
It is. It's true. I mean, and with a lot of singers who I know that we have the luxury here at UMKC that's nearly all of our students in the conservatory choirs are taking voice lessons. So I can speak to them about, I'm hearing some tongue tension. I can't see it because you have a mask on, but just as a reminder, this is how this should operate. This is how you should be feeling this, and to just sort of reset things. So I suppose for a conductor, it has been really interesting that I have to focus much more on what I hear with the singers. And yeah, I don't get that luxury of seeing what they're doing, but we can focus on alignment of the body and the breath, what I can see. And so we've gone back to a lot of that, which no one ever gets away from talking about anyway.
So I think one thing that also has happened, it feels like, that is conductors particularly had to give a lot more attention to the things outside the choir, connecting, like you talked about, community, talking about involvement, keeping connected with folks. Any other words about that, something that you've done or seen work, or about how you communicated during this time?
One of the things that I think is really important for me is to impart to the singers that they understand that I know and I care about each one of them. In previous years, I've struggled with having a real good sense of like students' names and being able to get to know them quickly enough. And I think this extra effort of showing the students that we're a community has forced me to get to know them better and know all of their names quickly. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's something about needing to know what they look like with the mask on, because I can't identify them so easily by their faces, that I have taken a really targeted approach to make sure that the first day of classes, I know every one of my, hundreds of students' names. That's made such a huge difference that they each feel known. And I know that that's just good practice. I should be doing that all the time, but there was something about taking that extra step to let them know that they're cared about. That has made a really big difference for the students. Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking a few minutes to talk. I really appreciate it. I know that we're just kind of all in this together. Right. And I thought this would be a good chance to share stories and words of encouragement. So thank you very much for doing this.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad to do it. Thanks so much.